You have heard every one of these 10 songs 1,000 times, at weddings, in movies, drifting out of a car window on a summer night, but almost nobody knows what was really happening behind the scenes when they were made. Behind the most played soul and R&B records of the 1970s are stories of grief, betrayal, accidental genius, and men who refused to be told no. Some of these stories were buried in a mother's basement, a movie producer's trash can, or a backyard the day after a funeral, and tonight, we're pulling every one of them into the light. Into the light. Welcome back to Rhythm and Legacy, where we don't just play the hits, we tell you what they cost, who they came from, and why they never really left the airwaves. Number 10, Good Times by Chic, 1979. It is one of the most played bass lines in the history of popular music, and it very nearly started a lawsuit instead of a movement. Nile Rodgers wrote the song the same morning it was recorded, sketching out the charts before his songwriting partner Bernard Edwards had even arrived at the studio, and the two of them laid the whole track down in a session that lasted only a few hours. What almost nobody realized at the time was that the song's rolling bass line was being lifted note for note at New York block parties by DJs, and in 1979, an unknown trio called the Sugar Hill Gang built an entire recording around it, calling it Rapper's Delight. Rodgers has said he first heard Rapper's Delight by accident, standing in a club and hearing his own bass line coming back at him through someone else's record. He was furious enough to threaten legal action against Sugar Hill Records, and rather than fight it in court, the label settled by giving Rodgers and Edwards full songwriting credit on Rapper's Delight itself. Because there was no lawsuit and no legal precedent set, artists spent the next decade sampling freely with little fear of consequence, and it would take another dispute over a decade later before sampling law caught up. Rodgers has since called Rapper's Delight one of the most important records to ever come out of Good Times, and every time Chic performs the song live to this day, the band still breaks into a few bars of the Sugar Hill Gang's rhymes as a nod to the song their bass line accidentally built. Number 9, I'll Take You There, by the Staple Singers, 1972. It hit number in 1972, and the sound that made it instantly recognizable wasn't written in Memphis at all. It was borrowed from a Jamaican instrumental. Stax Vice President Al Bell had been making frequent trips to Jamaica, and he brought back a reggae record called The Liquidator by the Harry J. All-Stars, playing it for the Muscle Shoals rhythm section as a template before they'd even heard Mavis Staples sing a note. The musicians who built the groove around it, including bassist David Hood, later said they had no idea it was someone else's record. They assumed it was simply a demo Bell had made himself, and didn't learn the truth for years. The song's uplifting lyrics carry a far heavier story than most listeners ever guessed. According to Bell, he began writing the words to I'll Take You There after attending the funeral of his younger brother, who had been murdered, and he has said that sitting in his father's backyard afterward, the bass line and the lyrics simply came to him, fully formed, and wouldn't leave him alone until he wrote them down. When Bell first brought the song to the group, Mavis Staples reportedly couldn't connect with it. So Bell stood on the studio floor and sang it to her himself until the feeling caught, and once it did, I'll Take You There became the Staple Singers' first #1 hit, and one of gospel-rooted soul's most enduring records. Number 8, James Brown, The Payback, 1973. James Brown recorded The Payback in 1973 as the soundtrack to the blaxploitation sequel, Hell Up in Harlem, and the movie's producers rejected every note of it. According to the account later repeated by Brown himself, the film's team dismissed the music as the same old James Brown stuff and handed the soundtrack job to Motown's Edwin Starr instead. Director Larry Cohen has since disputed exactly how the rejection was worded, though the outcome was the same either way. Brown's music never made it into the film. Furious, Brown decided to release the rejected material as a standalone album, and the title track became a raw, revenge-themed anthem built around a betrayal in his own camp. His longtime tour director later wrote that Brown began freestyling the lyrics after learning that a woman close to his organization had been having an affair, tossing aside the lyrics his bandleader Fred Wesley had already drafted and building something angrier and more personal on the spot. The Payback only reached the middle of the pop chart, but it topped the R&B chart and went gold, becoming Brown's only certified gold album. And its stripped-down, wah-wah-driven groove would go on to become one of the most sampled recordings in hip-hop history, proof that the movie that didn't want it ended up mattering far less than the song itself. Number 7, Papa Was a Rollin' Stone, Temptations, 1972.
Papa was a rolling stone.
Papa Was a Rollin' Stone wasn't written for the Temptations at all. Producer Norman Whitfield originally cut it as a 3-minute single for a lesser-known Motown act called The Undisputed Truth. When that version underperformed, Whitfield rebuilt the song from scratch for the Temptations, stretching it into a sprawling 12-minute epic where the group doesn't even sing a note until nearly 2 minutes in. A decision that reportedly frustrated a group used to being the star of their own records. The opening line, "It was the 3rd of September, that day I'll always remember, 'cause that was the day that my daddy died," has carried a persistent story for decades. That lead singer Dennis Edwards was shaken by the line because his own father had died on that exact date, and that Whitfield had written it deliberately to provoke him. Motown's own archives tell a slightly different story. Edwards' father actually died on the 3rd of October, not September, so the tale is best understood as one of the group's favorite pieces of studio folklore rather than a documented fact.
Bad talk going around town saying that Papa had 3 outside children.
The song won 3 Grammy Awards, became the Temptations' final #1 pop hit, and marked one of the last major recordings made inside Motown's original Detroit studio before the label's operations shifted west, closing out an era in the same session that helped define it. Number 6, Lovin' You, Minnie Riperton, 1975. Lovin' You hit #1 in 1975, and its most famous ingredient wasn't originally supposed to be there at all. The song began as a lullaby Riperton and her husband, songwriter Richard Rudolph, wrote to soothe their baby daughter, the future actress and comedian Maya Rudolph, so the couple could have a few quiet moments together at home. Riperton can actually be heard singing Maya, Maya, Maya near the end of the full album version, though radio stations edited that section out. Worried listeners would mistake it for a religious chant.
And every time that
The bird song that runs underneath the entire track has 2 different origin stories, depending on who's telling it. Rudolph has said that co-producer Stevie Wonder heard a bird singing outside an open studio window and told the engineers to get the bird, sending the team out to record real bird song at the Euclid Botanical Garden. Other accounts describe the chirping as something that was simply captured by accident during an early demo session and kept because it fit. Either way, the bird stayed, and Riperton's use of the extreme whistle register alongside them is still cited by vocalists like Mariah Carey and Ariana Grande as a direct influence. The song almost didn't reach radio at all. Epic Records initially refused to release it as a single, reportedly telling Rudolph and Riperton that a song built on nothing but voice, guitar, and electric piano, with no bass and no drums, wasn't a marketable record for a black singer being positioned for R&B radio. Rudolph and Riperton pushed back, the label relented, and Lovin' You became the only #1 hit of Riperton's career. We need a quick breather before we count down the final 5. So if these backstories are catching you off guard, tap that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got a favorite deep cut from this era that you think deserves its own episode, drop it in the comments below. We read every single one, and some of our best countdowns started right there. Number 5, Love Train OJs, 1973. Love Train by the OJs hit #1 in early 1973, the same week the Paris Peace Accords were signed, and its lyrics name-checking England, Russia, China, Egypt, and Israel weren't just poetic flourishes. They were a direct response to a world still gripped by the Cold War and the Vietnam War. Songwriters Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff built the song with no lyrics at all in the early studio sessions. According to OJ's member Eddie Levert, Gamble wrote the entire lyric on the spot in about 5 minutes once the group started laying down vocals, and everyone in the room reportedly knew immediately that they had something enormous. OJ's singer Walter Williams later called Love Train the group's first true message song, explaining that the era's turmoil made it exactly the right moment to sing about unity instead of heartbreak. Decades later, the song's message became a source of real tension when it was played without permission at a 2016 political convention. Group members publicly objected, saying the moment ran directly against everything the song stood for. Love Train became the OJ's only #1 pop hit, is widely considered one of the earliest disco records ever made, and its message of a world joining hands across borders has kept it in constant rotation for more than 50 years. Number 4, September, Earth, Wind and Fire, 1978. September contains one of the most beloved nonsense phrases in music history, and its co-writer fought her bandleader over it until the very end. Songwriter Alay Willis has said she pushed hard against the line "Badia," insisting to Maurice White that the words meant nothing and that listeners deserved to know what they were singing along to. White's response became one of the most quoted pieces of songwriting advice in soul music: never let the lyrics get in the way of the groove. Willis lost the argument, but she later said the moment taught her one of the most important lessons of her career. The song's most specific line, "Do you remember? The 21st night of September," has spawned endless fan theories over the decades, but by Willis's own account in interviews, the date was chosen purely because it fit the rhythm of the melody, not because of any hidden meaning. Guitarist Al McKay has said, "The music came together almost by accident one morning when he sat down at his home studio, feeling good, built a groove piece by piece, and brought it to White, who immediately sang the 'Do You Remember' hook back to him on the spot." September wasn't originally written for a studio album at all. It was created specifically for Earth, Wind and Fire's first greatest hits collection, making it one of the rare songs that became one of a band's signature records without ever appearing on a proper studio release first. Number 3, Stevie Wonder, Superstition, 1973. Superstition, a #1 hit in 1973, wasn't written for Stevie Wonder. He wrote it as a thank you gift for guitarist Jeff Beck. Beck had agreed to play guitar on Wonder's album Talking Book in exchange for Wonder writing him an original song, and the two came up with Superstition together in the studio almost by accident, with Beck playing a drum groove for fun and Wonder improvising the now famous riff and lyrics over it on the spot. The plan was for Beck to release Superstition first, with his new group, Beck, Bogert, and Apache, but their album was delayed, and Motown chairman Berry Gordy, convinced the song was a guaranteed #1 record, pushed Wonder to release his own version first to drive sales of Talking Book. Wonder has said he tried to fight for Beck to get the song, but the label's control over release schedules overruled him, and Wonder's version hit stores a month before Beck's, becoming a massive hit while Beck's rendition was largely dismissed as a cover of a song that wasn't originally his. Beck was reportedly upset about it publicly for a period, but Wonder made it up to him by writing "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers" as a follow-up gift, a song that became one of the most acclaimed guitar instrumentals of Beck's career. The two artists eventually reconciled, and performed Superstition together on stage decades later. Number 2. Let's Stay Together. Al Green, 1972.
Let me say it, sing.
Let's Stay Together almost didn't happen the way anyone remembers it, because producer Willie Mitchell spent days fighting Green over how the song should even be sung. Green kept trying to belt the vocal in the shouting style of singers like Otis Redding, and Mitchell kept pulling him back, reportedly telling him again and again, "Don't try to handle the song, Al. Just let it happen. Just let it ooze out." According to accounts from both men, the standoff went on so long that Green eventually stormed out of the studio in frustration and drove off into the countryside to cool down before coming back to finish the vocal Mitchell had been hearing in his head the entire time. Mitchell reportedly went even further to get the performance he wanted, gathering a room full of neighborhood men, buying them wine, and having them sit quietly on the studio floor while Green recorded, betting that Green sang his best when he had a room of people to perform for, rather than an empty booth. Whatever the method, it worked. Mitchell had 500,000 copies of the single pressed before release, and the record went gold within days of hitting stores.
Be the one you come running to.
Let's Stay Together became Green's only #1 pop hit and set the template for the entire high record sound that followed, built on the idea that restraint, not volume, was what actually moved people. Number 1, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, 1971. The song almost never made it to a record store shelf, and the song didn't even start with Marvin Gaye. The original idea came from Ronaldo Obi Benson of the Four Tops, who witnessed police violently attacking anti-war protesters in Berkeley's People's Park in 1969, an event later remembered as Bloody Thursday. Shaken by what he'd seen, Benson brought the idea to his own group first, but the other Four Tops turned it down, reportedly telling him it was too political for their image. Benson has said he pushed back, insisting it wasn't a protest song at all, but a love song about love and understanding. When Benson eventually brought the unfinished song to Marvin Gaye, Gaye reworked it with lyrics shaped by his own grief and anger, drawing on letters from his younger brother Frankie, who had just returned from 3 years of combat in Vietnam, along with Gaye's memories of the 1965 Watts riots. Motown founder Berry Gordy reportedly hated the finished song, calling it the worst thing he'd ever heard and refusing to release it, fearing it would damage Gaye's image. Gaye is said to have threatened to stop recording for the label altogether unless it came out. A Motown executive quietly pressed 100,000 copies without Gordy's full sign-off, and the song sold out within a week, forcing Gordy to release it properly. What's Going On spent 5 weeks at #1 on the R&B chart, sold over 2 million copies, and is still widely regarded as one of the greatest and most relevant recordings in American music history. A song almost nobody wanted, from a singer who refused to let it die. That's our list. 10 songs you've heard everywhere, and 10 stories most people never got the chance to hear. If one of these surprised you, let us know which one down in the comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of Rhythm and Legacy.